Council. Highland Council employee as Countryside Ranger for North West Sutherland with the Planning and Development Service of the Highland Council. Been in this area for as a ranger for nearly 7 years. I've lived in this area for coming up for 19. Prior to ranger, I was in Scary, working for the salmon farm there on the freshwater side, hatchery side, which was, when I joined it, it's still in its developmental stages. It was really quite interesting, fascinating. I've always been interested in any forms of nature and have a slight fisheries background as well.
Right. Where does your area start and stop?
It's actually very well defined as the old parish of Edric Hills and Durness, more or less exactly, in fact. Starting from the Kelsey Bridge up to Scary, Killenberry, out to Cape Wrath, Durness, down the line, round Errol, and stopping at Hope, Ilmoyne. Quite a well-defined area, quite a large area, small population, big area.
What would happen on a typical working day?
On a typical working day, which doesn't usually exist, on an average working day in the summer, it's quite considerable seasonal fluctuations actually. But in the summer, the ranger generally in the Highlands are employed to take people into the countryside, introduce them to the countryside, and help them enjoy it, understand more about it. We, as rangers, we all have programs and guided walks for visitors and schools and other groups that show any interest at all, to take them to some of the more interesting or beautiful places, talk a bit about them, and hopefully then they won't miss it, and they'll take back a better understanding and appreciation of the beauty and natural history of the area.
Right. And what do you do in the winter?
Oh, in the winter it's quite different. There's not so many tourists. Each ranger, depending where they are and their own interests, has a slightly different work programme. But I do a lot of work with the schools, 4 primary schools and secondary school at Killenberry. I work with them, primary schools particularly, quite a lot, doing small environmental programmes, building bird tables, nest boxes, just about anything I can think of really. Working along with the teachers and the curriculum, trying to get them out as much as possible, get a bit of fresh air and rain and wind and midges in their faces. It's quite a pleasurable part of it. I'm not sure we always learn a lot, but we enjoy ourselves. I also do some work in winter for the bird counts for Scottish National Heritage and RSPB. Durness, in fact, has a large population of overwintering Greenland barnacles. I think it's about 1% of the total population. So they come between Ale and Hone, as a special protection area, and Balnakeil. And I keep an eye on them, count them. Maybe there's been a slight increase in the last few years.
Is bird life your particular interest?
It's one of my main interests, certainly. I'm also interested in mammals, and I'm getting much better at learning all the plants, wide variation of plants up here, and the geology. It's a remarkable feature of the northwest, I suppose the whole of Mackay country, that you can't ignore the rocks around you. It's the rocks and what's below your feet that make the land what it is, and the plants are associated very much with the rocks and the minerals in it. It's a very visible feature up here, that the whole area just rocks and wind and water. It's a fantastic area, really elemental. Takes you back to your spiritual basics, being out and about.
So what attracted you to the job and to leave the salmon farm, where you were very interested as well in the job?
Yes, well latterly the salmon farming I found becoming a bit claustrophobic, and becoming very, very intensive. It was it's reasonably well paid, but it was hard work, cold, wet, and pretty thankless latterly, because of the commercial pressures, I think. To produce a lot for a lot of hard work and not very many thanks. However, I appreciated the opportunity to work there, and I learned a lot. And the opportunity came up with the Highland Council as a ranger based in Durness. And I thought it was an excellent opportunity for me to further my greater interest in wildlife generally, and get to know the area better and so much about it. Applied for the job, I was fortunate enough to get the job, and to begin with, I wasn't required to move, I could stay in the same place. So it was fantastic. And I've benefited from it since.
Do you find that the tourists are very interested in the area, or is it more that they like having somebody with them who can explain things?
Well, sometimes that. It's extremely variable. I do get some of the more interested professional groups who come out and see things, specific things, like geology, that I'm learning about. But in the main, in the summer, it's general visitors from all over Scotland, England, and more from the continent, with just wanting to go out and about locally, see what's available, see some things I hadn't seen before, some of the sights, some of the fantastic views. A lot of them come to Durness to see the puffins, do anything to see puffins, and some can't understand why at the 2nd of August there's no puffins. All flies and then go on, they're not very cooperative with tourists. But in the main, people are very mixed in their interests, and that's the great thing about being a ranger. You get to be interested in everything, which I am. It's very difficult to be specific, and this area is great for that. It's a general interest.
What's special about the geology in Mackay country? What makes it different from everywhere else?
It's unique in many ways. It's famous internationally in the northwest of Scotland, the famous Moyne Thrust. It's where two early geologists, or geomorphologists to be more accurate, came up and studied peach and horn, particularly in Assynt, but further north here is in Well, on the Moyne and Durness, right down through Assynt. They travelled far and they worked out the theories of the very, very controversial theories at the time, that somehow older rocks had been twisted and turned and folded onto the younger rocks, and that caused a lot of great arguments. It's known as the famous Moyne Thrust, thrust all the old rocks on top of the younger rocks, and it's caused great controversy until it was they realised there was some theory in it, and the whole idea of plate tectonics, earth masses shifting about on the surface and moving against each other, was worked out partly because of the studies up here, and people are still coming from all across the world. Geologists from other countries know about the Moyne Thrust. It's amazing.
And that hasn't happened anywhere else?
I suppose it has. I'm not a geologist.
Or is it maybe just better illustrated here?
It's certainly obvious here because the rocks are so near the surface and they're clearly visible, and not much subsoil. But Edinburgh and Scotland in general was in the foremost of geological thought.
And is it the way that the rocks were formed that has influenced what's on top of them?
Yeah, it's partly because it's the minerals in the rocks themselves that affect the soil.
What is the predominant rock type in the area?
Well, that's one of the fascinating things, because it changes. The east side of Scotland is so much younger than the west side. The west coast is mostly gneiss, Lewisian gneiss, 3,000 million years, give or take a few. In a very narrow stretch of a few miles, you have, say, the Cape Wrath, the gneiss, mixed pegmatites, Kervig Bay, about halfway along, very, very beautiful bay, by the way. One of my favourite ones. You're on the sandstone cliffs at Clomore, it's one of the highest sea cliffs in Britain. It's a special protection area as well for the seabirds. It's sandstone, and it's sandstone being sedimentary, it's all in layers, and when it erodes and fragments, leaves lots of fantastic ledges, ideal for seabirds. And you just come onto the Kyle of Durness, and there's a fault line down the Kyle of Durness, and you're onto limestone. The whole of Durness is sitting on limestone, which makes the soil very, very rich, good grassland. Historically, there's always been a good population here, partly because of the very good quality of soil. We go on to Smoo Cave, famous Smoo Cave, one of the largest sea caves in Britain. Not the deepest by any means, but one of the largest openings. That's on limestone, and you're across the Erebor, and you're onto quartzite, which is a good deal younger. Some really interesting false fossils, pipe rocks in there. Loch Erebor itself is very deep fault line, sea loch, famous anchorage during the wars. And east side of Erebor, you're onto limestone again, and then you're onto moist schists, which is ancient seabeds as well. Fantastic variation for geologists. And that's just speaking very generally. Those the geologists come up here studying that, studying in fine detail, and finding lots of variations within that. It's all something I'm still learning about for years.
Do people come up here to look for fossils?
No, not so much fossils up here. The limestone has a few, but I don't think they're very outstanding.
Right.
Fossils in the mud flats of Caithness slab stones. But there's other interesting formations. Certainly is.
What's the most popular of your expeditions that you take people on? Which ones are always oversubscribed?
Well, it has to be the Puffins at Farragut Head.
Right.
Farragut is almost people speak about this peninsula, but it's not. It's an extension of that's being at Moyne Thrust. That's Farragut Head itself is not limestone, it's schist. It's an extension, furthest westerly extension of the Moyne Thrust, it's schist. And because of the angle of the rock, you get a massive build-up of sand, which has created the Kyle of Durness and the amazing beaches and sand dunes in Farragut Head. Farragut Head itself is a site of special scientific interest, partly because of the dune system, because it's always changing. There's very little stabilisation. It's a naturally living dune system. It's moving all the time. It's shifting. Like it certainly was on Sunday. I was at a party on Sunday, and the sandstorms we had were almost unbearable. On two occasions I stopped to walk and get everybody around and said, "Do you want to go on with this? We can go back along the beach." Two did go back, but the other 21 decided to carry on. I think I regretted it a bit afterwards. Really, it was just heads down, hands over our eyes. It's like being in the desert experience. And that was a really good experience, how sand dunes form and blow out.
It must be quite a scary experience for some folk.
Yeah, they were a mixed group. Sutherland Walker's group were over experiencing the northwest, and they certainly enjoyed it. That one didn't enjoy the sandstorm, but they enjoyed the area. And speaking about the Farragut Head, the Puffins, the east side of the Farragut Head's mostly cliffs, and there used to be quite a lot of puffins right around the head, and now they seem to be located in certain areas. And at one point in particular, at an interesting natural arch site, where there's a larger congregation of them. I saw about 200 there just a couple of weeks ago. 100 on the grassy mound, the famous grassy knoll, and the puffin burrows on the top, fulmars down the side, and some razorbills and gillnuts. But that's where I take them to. Lead them out. It's about a 2-hour walk. We walk along the beach and across to the east side, and we can sit and watch the puffins fairly close without disturbing them, coming and going in their burrows. And we walk back down the east side.